Hey everyone, and happy winter solstice to those observing, and and given the cold and how my little misadventure when I was coming back from Sonic 3 last night, it, it took a bit out of me. I'm gonna have to swap the intended video I have this evening, so apologies there. That being said, I am still going to keep my promise of covering a video game adaptation that's not quite as enjoyable as Sonic 3 is, so I'm one from the same studio, no less. So, with the show having its second and final season this year, as it was cancelled due to low interest and is now being shopped around to other producers, one of whom will only be buying it on the grounds it can be given a hard reboot, which might be necessary, given that seems going to happen in video games. Here are my thoughts, as well as Postmortem on Season 2 of Paramount Plus's Halo. When I covered the first season near the start of this year, I was hoping the second and would be an improvement, especially in the sense that they fired the previous showrunners and replaced them with ones who are fans of source material. Oh, and I could say that the answer is yes and no. Oh, a lot of issues from the first game still present, which I will be addressing, but it does resemble source material a bit more, including key concepts such as the ODST drop team, the he Fall of Reach, and most of all, the finale of the season and now the series focusing largely on the a ancient weapon and that a franchise is named for, or regrettably, it still has a lot of problems, but the only way to really go over why is to go over each individual episode briefly. I won't be going super in depth because I don't think the show warrants it, to be honest. But I've not considered myself as a sympathetic person. I don't give like the answers that are currently trending. I give my honest and clear thoughts on any given topic. So let's get started. So the first episode, Sanctuary, picks up roughly the first season left off, and one of the things I'm noticing is that it attempts to make the second season something that's like a soft reboot, or just a do-over what's come before, as one of the first major events to play out is, like in the games, having Madrigal getting glassed in actually quite impressive detail. And even with my unfamiliarity with most of the crew, aside from the fact they actually poached Happy Madison, alum Denny Gordon of all people, to direct a couple episodes. It actually looks alright. Granted, some of the CGI does look like it was a bit down from watching old episodes of Red vs. Blue, but whenever they do things practically, it's not the worst thing ever. Unfortunately, a lot of the squabbling of the UNSC is still present there, which also still gives up a vibe, as I mentioned before, like if you watched an episode of The Expanse that you ordered from Ally Express. It's kind of like that. I still tell people, go watch Expanse. It's a better show. And I'm definitely going to keep things as succinct as I can and as I continue. The season premiere consists of 2 episodes, as is often the practice, with the second being entitled Sword, And unfortunately, a lot of the Valley Devices supporting casts, many of whom are unique to the show, are still present, including in the likes of Halsey, Quan, and Soren, and say nothing of Miranda. Uh, I mean, it's just it's kind of a letdown how that he he silver timeline and just could never seem to really work itself out at all. I mean, and especially it's not like that it's impossible to make an adaptation with characters unique to said adaptation. Still have them fit in the world. I mean, with yeah, I mean, I am still drafting my full look at, say, the Knuckles event, but it's Wade Whipple and his extended family actually play off the titular echidna quite well, and other characters such as the rogue agents, the bounty hunters, especially my favorites, the enigmatic buyer, still feel like they could conceivably exist in like the Sonic universe. So not be the only time we come back to that, but just to show that it's certainly not impossible for Paramount Plus or even Paramount as a whole to make a decent video game adaptation, on a personal level at least. 3. Vicegrad, apologies for pronunciation, since it has a similar name to a place in Hungary of all places, is and the idea, yeah, it definitely gets a lot more simultaneously more dreary and also a bit sillier from here. I mean, since it debuted, they staggered out the other 6 episodes over the weeks of February leading into, and with the final one debuting on the spring equinox of this year here. And for all the best efforts, and even though they're including and trying to warp in more and more of the game's mythology, I think they didn't go quite far enough in walking back the changes as from the first season. And since it's definitely, I am glad that for the most part they ditched a lot of the elements that didn't quite work. I mean, we don't see Burn Gorman's character her again, but I think that's also because he was shooting a movie elsewhere, or when the show was being made. I mean, and in a completely different, and the movie's being made in a completely different country as well. So there's that. Episode 4, Reach, and this one actually depicts the fall of the colony, and even though it is a key event in the franchise's lore, or it's honestly a one I have very mixed feelings on, because there are moments like here that are legitimately engaging, but there's also countless others that feel like they were transplanted it in from a YA a drama that Freeform passed and those are the elements, especially regarding Quan, that end up still being among the weaker elements of the show. And in all fairness, as the adaptations, in sense, have never really had the same kind of impact to being with a previous attempt at making animated film in this event, still remaining like a divisive subject in the fandom, since its reception is decidedly mixed, at least based on what I've been able to find about it. Regardless of your thoughts on how the show depicts it, it does more or less us lead into who the second half. All right, even if it's not for the most compelling reasons. And so let's not waste any more time. Episode 5, Alaria, and this is also precisely what I mean about how the show feeling less like a full-on adaptation, even with the second season making more effort to include elements of source material, and again more like a YA science fiction drama which just happens to have the franchise's name on it. That's thankfully, even though the reasoning for a lot of these characters going out of their armor doesn't make a whole sense to me, and I'm sparing you for the worst of it, I'm just glad there's no more are getting down with the superior Hermine. Which, again, I'm glad that even the actor portraying 117 then believed was a mistake. So let's not dwell on that any further. Episode 6, Onyx, like the stone, and it sees he's a training simulation prepping for the last couple episodes, and in all fairness, as this is where the story starts to get interesting. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, it was something of a too little, too late feeling, in which I can definitely understand and sympathize with. I mean, I've encountered that feeling myself at times, so I can definitely hope that the next attempt, whenever that might be, he ends up avoiding the mistakes made by this show. So let's finish this up in one quick go. So, episode 7, Thermopylae. No, I did not mispronounce everyone's favorite real estate themed board game. This actually resembles The Battle. Unfortunately, he does not have the budget or the stylistic flair of 300 films. But despite that, it's actually alright as penultimate episode goes, and as the chief recovers his armor, the time has come to finish the fight, and it's definitely another instance where the moments when things start to get interesting, the whole momentum just straight up stops. It feels like how should I put this? As when you're on a roller coaster, which the incline just seems to last forever and forever. Then, the moment you're over the hill, and you're feeling like you're getting some adrenaline and rushing, it's over, just like that. Episode 8, Halo, and now the conclusion as both the ODST are providing support and 117 lands on the titular ring, and they must decide how it should be used. But first there's actually still yet more trauma dumping to finish, and admittedly, a lot of the gunfights in this season have improved to the first one that take place, and especially apparent in these last few ones with this whole, you get to see several of the other Spartans dual wield some Needlers, which is one of my favorite combos. It was my absolute favorite being like the Needler and the Magnum. You also see a chief doing an Irby with his own sword, and as others seek to claim the ring as well. Oh, he makes contact with Guilty Spark, but that's ultimately where the season entire show end. On a cliffhanger, we will not be seeing resolved, so let's get into who is my postmortem and what's the next course of action. I am not saying that it's impossible to adapt this franchise into another medium. I'm not saying that this particular adaptation in and of itself was not without potential. But it is clear that this was not the approach to go, when that potential was never realized, at least not to its fullest extent. I mean, some of the other adaptations have been admittedly decent as someone who's not a huge fan, and with the event Henceforward Under Dawn and the anime anthology film Halo Legends being decent. That latter is a bit like the Halo version of the 1980 heavy metal or the Animatrix, where a bunch of different stories from different directors set in the same fictional universe, all in the same basic theme and source material. And I definitely wouldn't even mind seeing like something in the vein of, say, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, or at the very least, a Blood Dragon remix, or as an offbeat adult animated show. Oh, I mean, heck, it's a crazy time for video game adaptations where The Last of Us and Fallout can be prestige TV, succeed in the areas where this show did not. And as I mentioned, the Sonic adaptations that Paramount has done have been quite fun. Especially, I can vouch for that as someone who really enjoyed seeing Sonic 3 last night and eager to see what's coming next. Next means we're already talking about another movie and giving Shadow a TV show, which could work. And yeah, I have not seen the Secret Level anthology on Prime, but some of the grab bag of ideas and games we went with, just in and of itself, is kind of peculiar. Heck, Concord of all games aims a dead service title, not even the only one featured on there. Like Crossfire also got an episode, and that's still not even the weirdest part. As I stated before, or though Paramount will not be moving forward with the show, they are shopping the IP around to other suitors. I do not recall every single one, but they've got multiple offers to buy it. The most prominent being from Christopher Nolan of his company Syncope, with his being one on condition that specifically be a hard reboot where they just go back to square one, and which I think actually might be the ideal choice. I mean, heck, his brother Jonathan was a co-creator of HBO's Westworld events and the aforementioned Fallout Hotel Prime, so if anyone could make it work, it's him, and to my understanding, I believe he's also a fan of the material, and it's definitely a shame because as there is, I think one day we will get an adaptation that will be doing for the material what the likes of Mandalorian and or for Star Wars, but this is not it. I mean, I still will admit to liking that 8-minute test reel that they filmed back in 2000s, and even some of the live action commercials for the games in the original trilogy, quite impressive, especially I think his Spartan armor. And even though it's not the worst video game adaptation and to come out of this time frame, this is a decade that's seen the likes of Monster Hunter and Borderlands disgrace movie screens after all. It's still one of the biggest cases of missed potential I've seen in my experience. And it's not going to be the only case where I bring this up either. So, probably know what's coming, and no matter what they decide with I, I, with the next set of my strike expired, I will see it through. That'll be all for now. I'll see you all again soon, so take care, everyone.